Hello, everybody. This is AK. I'm back. So, this evening I'll have two videos. This is the first of two videos. It's a bonus weekend. Right. So, I've been watching more YouTube videos lately, and I see many videos that has to do with the topic of how expensive Singapore is today, right? And I don't know why, but I just have to say something, okay? Personally, I do not feel that Singapore is expensive, right? And of course, some will say, "Oh, but AK, you're rich, right?" You know, but no, that's not the point. I never feel that I'm rich anyway, all right? But you know, I feel in Singapore is it's only expensive if we want to buy a car and if we want to buy private property like condominium or landed property, right? So a landed property is out of reach for most average Singaporeans. I'm very sure, which is why people go across the causeway to Johor to buy a landed home. You know, if that's what they want, right? It's a different country, but I mean, if that makes them happy, right? And if we are okay with taking public transport like buses and the trains and the occasional taxi ride, then we don't need a car, right? Which is, of course, crazy expensive now in Singapore. It's like what, $200,000 just for a 1.5 liter car. It's ridiculous. But if we don't buy a private property or a car, I don't think Singapore is expensive. I mean, I just should share photos of the food that I eat on a daily basis, a regular basis. I mean, if you have not seen them, you can go to the community tab in my YouTube channel and you see I share photos of the kind of food that I eat. It's like $3 for lunch, and it's healthy food. Right, it's good food, and I do fruit rescue, $2 for a bag of fruits, you know, and they're still good to eat. I I do not think it's expensive for regular people at all, right? I'm not talking about how rich people don't find Singapore expensive. I'm just talking about how regular people don't have to find Singapore expensive too if they know how to keep their needs simple and their wants few, right? And then when I talk to expats in Singapore, expatriates who are working in Singapore, they tell me how they find Singapore very affordable, and not because they are making big money in Singapore. A lot of them actually have local pay, but they find that if they live like the locals, Singapore is very affordable. So they stay in, they rent a room in a HDB flat, which, I mean, even the price has gone up, is still affordable. And they eat at hawker centers. They don't eat at fancy restaurants. So if they live like the locals, they say Singapore is very affordable. However, we have locals who try to live like expatriates. They have to stay in condominiums, stay in landed properties. They must have a car. They must eat in fancy restaurants, do fine dining. They go on a holiday or a few holidays each year. And then, of course, they will find it expensive, right? So, if a local, live like a local, right? I remember, I shared this a few years ago. I have a Canadian friend and was working in Singapore, and recently I met up with her, and she said that she still finds Singapore very affordable even though her rental has gone up for her HDB flat. I mean, not the whole flat, but a room in a HDB flat. The rental has gone up, but she says it's like $200 more a month now, but it's still very affordable, and she's still amazed by how cheap Singapore is, you know, the food in hawker centers, and also how little she has to pay in taxes. Income tax is so much lower compared to Canada, right? And I'm sure it's very much lower compared to some European countries and the Scandinavian countries for sure, right? And on our part, if we have been prudent with money over the years and we have not been spending lavishly, all right, just spend money like drinking water. Of course, some people don't drink a lot of water, so maybe that's a bad example, right? So if we have not been spending money indiscriminately, lavishly, and we have been careful with money, I think we should be doing okay because these habits will become lifelong habits usually, right? Even as our income increase, we would not upgrade our lifestyle excessively. I think we should do okay, right? And of course, people say, oh, but now inflation is so high, not like the last 15 years, that kind of thing. I say, okay, to that end, I have a blog post that I published some years ago. And it's about how we don't depend on wage increases to beat inflation, right? Don't depend on wage increases to have higher income. And I'll share a link to that blog post. And in that blog post, actually, I call it an ebook in inverted commas because it's a blog post that's a collection of a few blog posts about how we can achieve freedom from wage slavery so that we're not 100% dependent on our monthly wages. And if we don't get our monthly wages, we will starve, and how we should have a meaningful emergency fund, and how I think that's important, and what is the first step to becoming richer and also how we can retire a millionaire, right? We should all try to work towards retirement adequacy. And Singapore is really not expensive if we have the right plan in place, we have the right habits, and we will come out on top even from a recession. Get the whole family involved because achieving financial freedom is a family affair. Right? I'll leave a link to that blog post in the description below if you're interested to read up about what I think. Okay? So if AK can do it, so can you. Bye-bye.